Hi guys, and I hope you're well. So today I want to talk about training in the cold. So recently it has been very cold and it's probably going to remain cold for the next month or two. And whilst gyms are closed, we're forced to train in garages or the garden or just in a park. So what I wanted to talk about is how to A, keep safe whilst training in the cold, and B, how to keep your performance or maintain your performance whilst you train in the cold. So first of all, there are a few things that we do need to consider. Number one, how cold is it? Obviously, the colder it is, the more precautions that you're gonna have to take to maintain your heat and maintain your performance. Number two, is it wet and cold? Seeing as if it's wet, the chances are of you losing heat is going to be slightly higher. Number three, how big you are and what you're made up of. So if you're quite a small person with a low mass, chances are you're going to lose heat quicker than someone who has larger mass. Although there's a greater surface area for those who are bigger, chances are they're made up of more muscle or more fat, which works as insulation. So if you're someone who's quite tall and slender, the chances are you're going to be losing heat quicker than someone who's shorter and built with more muscle or holds more body fat. Number four, the type of exercise you do will also influence how much body heat you lose. So if you do something more intense like HIIT training or general circuit training, the chances are you will generate more thermogenesis and maintain your body temperature better. Although if you do something less intense, the chances are you lose more body heat because you're doing less things that will drive more thermogenesis. This becomes an issue when you are performing strength training movements, such as Olympic lifting or powerlifting or whatever. In between sets, you're going to need 1 to 3 minutes to recover, so in that time you need to be careful not to lose too much body heat. There are three main things that we need to make sure don't happen when we're training in the cold. Number one is peripheral tissue damage, such as frostbite. So in this country, the likelihood of getting frostbite is actually fairly low, but it can certainly happen if things do get too cold and you don't keep yourself warm enough. So this can also happen when you're working with children or children are playing outside, because their ability to lose heat is greater simply because they have a smaller mass to skin surface area. Number two is hypothermia. Again, probably unlikely in this country unless the temperatures really do drop too low, but this is when your core body temperature gets too low and things get pretty bad pretty quickly if you don't treat it. And the third thing we need to worry about is the loss of performance. So training in the cold could lead to vasoconstriction, which is when the blood flow is brought into the core to try and keep yourself warm. So the blood comes away from the skin and the muscle and the peripheral area of your body. And that will basically mean that the muscles could have less blood, which will mean less oxygen and less nutrients to allow for recovery. It also could mean that the muscles will be cold and have less flexibility, which could lead to strains and sprains. The other thing we've got to worry about is shivering, where shivering takes up or uses up a lot of glycogen in the muscle mass, again leading to lack of performance because that glycogen and glucose could be used better in performance. So of course, there are a few things that you can do to make sure that you don't have the onset of hypothermia or vasoconstriction, which can lead to frostbite and of course lack of performance. Number one is, of course, wear suitable clothing. Hey, put a hat on. So wearing more layers, of course, will add to insulation and so you won't lose as much body heat. However, there are a few things that you do need to consider. Number one, will the clothing absorb your sweat? If it does absorb the sweat and holds the water, chances are when you stop your activity, you will lose heat quicker. And number two, when it comes down to clothing, is making sure that the clothing itself doesn't constrain your mobility or flexibility. If you're doing things like Olympic weightlifting or running or jumping or any sort of sport that requires a good range of motion, if you're wearing constricting clothing, chances are you won't be able to perform the activity or you might just break your clothing. Within the session, you may want to take off layers. Obviously, that's absolutely fine, but be aware as your intensity reduces due to being at the end of the session, or if you're doing strength training and you're taking rest in between your sets, you may warm up and cool down throughout the session. So you could always put hats on and off or take coats on and off depending on your activity, how cold it is, and generally what you're doing. You can warm up more vigorously. So warming up is extremely important no matter what the weather, but in the cold, of course, it's probably even more important. Making sure that you increase your heart rate, so more blood flow goes into the muscles. Making sure that your muscles and the joints go through a full range of motion to prevent injury are going to be very important, especially in the cold weather when the muscles naturally tighten up to begin the onset of shivering. So warming up more vigorously will make sure that your heart rate increases more quickly. It will make sure that more blood flow gets into the system more quickly, and also it will drive your central nervous system to be more awake, so you'll be more up for and more ready for the session ahead. Another thing you can do to boost your body heat and also increase your motivation to do the session is to warm up inside. This will generally allow you to warm up quicker, and once you are warm, you can then go outside to do your session. If you are someone who is doing strength training or hypertrophy training or any sort of exercise that requires rest in between your sets, it may be beneficial to actually rest inside your home when it's nice and warm. That will allow you to manage your body heat far more effectively and probably increase your levels of motivation. Another thing to consider is your nutrition. You will lose glycogen and glucose when you begin to shiver as your muscles contract. So making sure that you eat slightly more carbohydrates before your session may allow you to maintain your performance throughout it. And if you are looking to shiver throughout your session, then you're going to need more carbohydrates for that as well. But probably shouldn't be shivering. You should be warm by then if you are working out. So there you have it. There's a few hints and tricks just to allow you to maintain your performance and stay safe in the bitter cold. Hopefully the summer will be around shortly, and then I'll do another video to explain the best ways to keep cold in the summer. Hope you're all well. If you've got any questions, just holler me up in the message box thing. Direct messages, whatever you want to call it.